Thanks for joining us here on CTV News Channel. I'm Renee Rogers. National Guard members have begun to arrive in Los Angeles after 2 days of unrest in that city. The protests began on Friday after a federal crackdown on immigration in the city and across the state. Overnight, law enforcement officers clashed with dozens of protesters, with hundreds taking to the streets. The Los Angeles Police Department says protests were peaceful throughout the day on Saturday, but footage shows officers firing tear gas and stun grenades into crowds of people on the streets. The demonstrations kicked off on Friday when dozens of people were arrested by immigration officers. The National Guard arrived in downtown LA earlier today. And Trump taking to social media early this morning, commenting on the National Guard being deployed. He said federal intervention in LA and California was permitted due to what he describes as the, quote, incompetent handling of the protests by Governor Gavin Newsom and LA Mayor Karen Bass. Trump also said masks will no longer be allowed during protests. And responding to Trump's post, Newsom says the National Guard wasn't even deployed in LA when it was posted. He adds that facts matter. On Saturday, in a different post, Newsom condemned the deployment of the National Guard. He's calling the move inflammatory, saying it will only escalate tensions and erode public trust. In the city of Paramount, south of LA, there were sporadic confrontations between protesters and officials. Federal immigration authorities in riot gear used tear gas on the protesters. And with me now is Paramount Mayor Peggy Lemons. Mayor Lemons, thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me, Renee.
So what is happening in Paramount right now? Are National Guard members continuing to arrive?
We had heard that National Guard came in around 4 a.m., but we have no confirmation of that, nor have we seen them.
Okay, so there does seem to be a little bit of, conflicting reports about what is happening. What can you tell us about what happened in your city yesterday? How did it all start?
My understanding is that we have an office in the city of Paramount in an industrial section of park of town, and there's an Office of Homeland Security there, and they were staging in the parking lot, and this industrial complex is right near the freeway too. So some people were exiting the freeway, and there were some passersby, and they saw all of these federal officers in the parking lot area and went up and began to speak to them and confront them. We've kind of come to the conclusion that because of all of the raids that were made at all of the Home Depots across LA County, and because there was a Home Depot across the street, that perhaps they thought they were preparing to do a raid on the Home Depot in Paramount. The information that we received was that was not the case. They were simply staging in the parking lot. And so the people that were there confronting the federal agents began live streaming and posting on Facebook, and that drew more and more crowds, and we ended up with the confrontation that happened yesterday.
So the information that you have received about there not being any ICE raids, is this from the Trump administration?
No, it's from the local officials. I don't believe we've heard anything from the Trump administration. So it's what we were able to glean from the sheriff's department and any local officials that showed up. We did have representatives on site from the Congresswoman Barragon's office, and Supervisor Hahn stopped by, and nobody was able to get any information that there were any illegals being detained or arrested, and the same from the Sheriff's Department, that these officers were simply staging in front of their offices, whether they were staging to go do a raid somewhere else or they were gathering equipment for some kind of check. We don't know, but they were staged in the parking lot, a number of them, and drew attention from the passersby and people exiting the freeway.
How big did the protests get in Paramount, and was there any violence involved?
There was, I think, at maximum I'd say maximum 400, between 200 and 300 at different times, because it was on the border of Paramount and Compton. Some of the protesters were in the city of Paramount, some of them were in the city of Compton. So we couldn't really see from the staging area that we were at how many were on the Compton side. But as we checked throughout the day, we were told, 200, 300. There was a lot of verbal assault happening, of course, on the officers. And then at some point in time, different points in time throughout the day, the agents deployed tear gas and flashbangs. That's what they're called, flashbangs and tear gas on the crowd. The crowd was throwing rocks and some bottles. We were told that there were no serious injuries reported, that 4 protesters were arrested, and 1 officer sustained an injury of glass got some glass in his eye. So there was some vandalism of the Home Depot property. We already have crews out there, doing cleanup. All in all, we think the sheriff's department handled things extremely well. They were very patient. It was the federal officers who actually called them in for assistance, is what I am told. As the crowds grew, then they contacted local law enforcement and asked them to come in and help. They went in and did a tremendous job in, keeping everything under control, just kind of, letting the protesters protest and kind of waited them out, and then slowly pushed them back off the boulevard, and everything ended without incident.
So as of right now, just to be very clear, there's no more protest happening in Paramount right now. And then the other thing I want to be clear about, you haven't seen any members of the National Guard staging there. Am I correct in those 2 assertions?
I was able to get a check just before we came on air that nobody has seen the National Guard yet. So even though we were told they were going to arrive around 4 a.m., we don't know that they're here. And as far as protests anywhere in the city, nothing that I'm aware of.
Very, very interesting. The National Guard, do you feel that it's, an appropriate response?
I don't think it was an appropriate response if they are here in Paramount, because, as I said, there was a lot of law enforcement out there. They made a very big showing. They kept things under control. Nothing ever got out of control of the sheriff's department. They were prepared for anything that could happen. I was at the command center. Every resource that we could possibly need was there. And I think that once they even removed the federal officers from the site, which they were eventually able to do, the crowds began to dissipate. So I think that extreme show of force just agitates. It doesn't help. And that was kind of demonstrated by even removing the federal officers from the site yesterday.
Mayor Lemons, thank you very much for being here with us today. We appreciate your insights and all this. You're on the ground there, so very wonderful to talk to you. Thank you very much again.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Have a good evening.
You too. That is Peggy Lemons, Mayor of Paramount, California.